comparative mythology. I wanted to just make it some really solid stuff. I didn't want to bring anything that was going to weaken the case, obviously. But the one thing that strikes me so obvious is the story of Lazarus, only found in the Gospel of John. You would think this would be newsworthy and would make it into the other Gospels, that Jesus had raised a dead and smelly guy from the dead.
Well, he does that he does raise other people, but this one is because it's 4 days or something like that.
Yeah, Jairus' daughter. Well, interestingly enough, I contended this in ChristCon, I contended it in Sons of God, I contended it in Who is Jesus. That story is Osiris being raised from the dead, period, no question about it. Horace, in, the Book of the Dead, calls forth Osiris from the tomb after 4 days. This is an Egyptian story. An Egyptian story. Now, in the Gospel story, there are two, a Mary and a Martha, standing by. Osiris' sisters. Well, in the Egyptian story, there are the two Mertas. Martha, Mary, Merta. Sounds a little bit familiar.
Yeah, slightly.
And they are Isis and Nephthys, and they're called Mertas. They just happen to be Osiris' sisters. Sound a little familiar?
Slightly, yes. Slightly.
And here's another interesting little tidbit. Osiris we find in Judea, and he has the god appellation appended to his name, El. Now, the one artifact we have is Osiris El, or Osar El, but there's no reason that we couldn't switch that, and it would be El Osiris, be Lazarus. That's how you break it down anyway. It's El Azarus, El Osiris, El Asar. His name is Asar or Azar in Egyptian. And it's interesting that this story is only in the Gospel of John, of Lazarus being raised from the dead. If it was historical, you'd think they would all be jumping on it. They would be like, well, yes, they raised Jairus' daughter, for example, in Luke, is it not? But the thing is also we have in the Gospel of John, I contend, was written probably in Egypt, probably at Alexandria, for an Egyptian audience. I am 100% certain that it was written for an Egyptian audience, and that is why we have the raising of Lazarus in that book, Gospel of John.
And the prologue, too. I mean, that's right out of Philo, isn't it?
The prologue with the word. Well, interestingly enough, too, in the Egyptian mythology is this character named Anubis, who has this whole role as Massey calls him the baptizer, but he dips Horus into the lake, the heavenly lake, and like John the Baptist. And the thing is, this is something that I'm doing some research on for a follow-up book, Christ in Egypt, which is inspired by what happened with the Zeitgeist material and the new ebook that I did on that. But the whole Egyptian connection is so supreme, especially with the Gospel of John, that this character, Anub, you see, if we were to take this whole story, the Christ mythology, Christ myth, out of context, well, the way they've put it, the people who have promulgated it as historical have it in this ridiculous rinky-dink context of having no influence from the outside world, this tiny little place. It's just empty of people in Judea, 90 miles, there's no influence. Somehow they had a little force field around them. There was absolutely no connection with the real world outside of it. If you put it into context in the Mediterranean, and you have all these myths going on, you have serious civilization. Just watch Gladiator, okay? Man, you really need help on seeing how massively built up the Mediterranean area was. Let's look at the Egyptian at the time. It was already in decay, but it was massive. It wasn't this little isolated world. It was cosmopolitan. The Mediterranean at the time was cosmopolitan. They had a brotherhood all around it that was well organized.